Welcome everyone. I'm excited to kick off today's presentation. Today, we'll be exploring Introduction to Physiology and Transport. On this first slide, I just want to warmly welcome you all and give a quick overview of what's to come. We'll be covering the basics of physiology, how our bodies function, and the essential processes of transport that keep everything running smoothly. So, let's get started and dive into this fascinating topic together. Today, we're going to explore two main branches of science that help us understand the body's parts and how they work. The first is anatomy, which is all about studying the structures of the body and how they relate to one another. It's like understanding the blueprint of a building. Historically, early studies of anatomy involved dissection, where scientists carefully cut apart bodies to see how everything is put together. Nowadays, we also use advanced imaging techniques, like MRI and CT scans, to look inside the body without cutting into it, giving us a detailed view of its structures. The second branch is physiology, which focuses on how the body functions. It's concerned with understanding what the body parts do and how they work together to keep us alive and healthy. Physiology looks at the processes happening inside the body, like how the heart pumps blood or how muscles contract. Together, anatomy and physiology give us a complete picture. Anatomy shows us the structure, and physiology explains how those structures function. This foundation is essential for understanding the human body as a whole. Let's start by understanding what a system is. A system consists of related organs that work together to perform a common function. When we look at the organ system level, we're talking about how these groups of organs coordinate to keep our bodies running smoothly. For example, the digestive system is a great illustration. It's responsible for breaking down the food we eat and absorbing nutrients our bodies need to function. This system includes several key organs, such as the mouth, where digestion begins, and the small and large intestines, where most nutrient absorption and waste processing happen. Other important organs are the liver, which helps process nutrients and detoxify, the gallbladder, which stores bile, and the pancreas, which produces enzymes that assist digestion. It's also interesting to note that our body is made up of 11 different systems, each with its own specialized role. When we talk about levels of structural organization, we're referring to how these systems are built from simpler units, like cells, working up to tissues, organs, and ultimately the entire body. Connecting this to the bigger picture, understanding these systems helps us see how complex and integrated our bodies are. Every system has a specific task, but they all work together to maintain health and homeostasis. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. So this slide is all about the concept of homeostasis, which is really the body's way of maintaining a condition of equilibrium or balance in its internal environment. Think of it as the body's way of keeping things steady and almost constant, despite the constant changes happening outside and inside. Now, it's important to remember that this is a dynamic condition, meaning it's always adjusting and fine-tuning to stay within a narrow range. This narrow range is crucial because it's compatible with sustaining life. For example, our blood glucose levels are tightly regulated and usually stay between 70 and 110 milligrams per deciliter. If they go outside this range, it can be dangerous. What's really interesting is that the whole body works together to keep this internal environment within those normal limits. It's a coordinated effort involving multiple systems working in harmony. And this process is what we call homeostasis, the body's incredible ability to regulate itself and maintain stability, which is essential for our survival and overall health. Maintaining the volume and composition of body fluids is really essential for overall health and proper body function. Body fluids are basically dilute, watery solutions that contain dissolved chemicals, and they can be found both inside and outside of our cells. When we talk about fluids inside the cells, we call that intracellular fluid, or ICF. That's where most of our body's water is stored, and it plays a critical role in supporting cellular processes. Outside the cells, we have extracellular fluid, or ECF, which surrounds and bathes our cells. ECF includes all the fluid outside the cells, and one important part of this is interstitial fluid, which is the fluid located between tissues and cells. It acts as a medium for nutrient and waste exchange between the blood and the cells. Now, why is all this important? Because our body carefully regulates these fluids to keep everything in balance. That's what we call homeostasis. When the volume or composition of these fluids gets out of whack, it can affect how cells function and, ultimately, our overall health. So, understanding how our body manages these fluids helps us see the bigger picture of how our body maintains stability amidst constant changes. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Cellular function really depends on how well the composition of the interstitial fluid is regulated. This fluid is part of our body's internal environment, and keeping its composition stable is crucial for cells to work properly. As the interstitial fluid moves through the body, its makeup can change, which is important because it reflects the dynamic nature of our internal environment. Now, this movement isn't just random, it's a carefully balanced process. Blood flows through capillary walls, allowing nutrients like glucose, oxygen, and ions to pass into the interstitial fluid, providing essential substances to our tissue cells. At the same time, waste products like carbon dioxide are picked up from the cells and carried away. This constant exchange across capillary walls ensures our tissues stay nourished and waste-free, which is vital for overall body function. So, the regulation of interstitial fluid composition isn't just about maintaining balance. It's about supporting the very foundation of cellular health and, ultimately, the health of our entire body. Homeostasis is a constant balancing act within our bodies, but it's important to remember that it's always being challenged or disrupted in some way. These disruptions can come from various sources. For example, physical insults like extreme heat or a lack of oxygen can throw our internal environment off balance. Changes in the internal environment, such as a drop in blood glucose levels when we don't eat enough, also affect homeostasis. Additionally, physiological stress, like the demands of work or school, can put extra strain on our systems. Now, it's crucial to understand that not all disruptions are the same. Some are mild and temporary, meaning our bodies can quickly restore balance without much effort. Think of it like a small disturbance that your body easily corrects. Others are much more serious, intense and prolonged disruptions, such as poisoning or severe infections, can overwhelm our systems and cause significant problems. So, controlling homeostasis is really about how well our body can respond to these challenges. It's a dynamic process that involves detecting disruptions and making adjustments to maintain stability. This ongoing regulation is what keeps us healthy and functioning properly, even when faced with various stresses and disturbances. Now, let's take a closer look at the cycle of events that help maintain homeostasis. The body is constantly monitored and remonitored to ensure everything stays within healthy limits. Each variable that we keep an eye on, like temperature or blood sugar, is called a controlled condition. These are the key factors that our body actively regulates. The process involves three basic components. First, we have the receptor, which detects changes in the controlled condition. Then, the control center, typically the brain or endocrine glands, processes this information and determines if adjustments are needed. Finally, the effector acts to bring the variable back to its normal range. All of this forms a feedback system, which is really the core mechanism behind homeostasis. It's a continuous loop, monitor, decide, act, that keeps our internal environment stable, even when external conditions change. Understanding this cycle highlights how our body responds dynamically to maintain health and function. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Now, let's discuss the role of receptors in our body. Receptors are specialized body structures that constantly monitor changes in a controlled condition. Think of them as sensors that keep an eye on what's happening inside and outside our body. When they detect a change, such as a shift in temperature, they send that input to the control center, which is usually the brain or spinal cord. For example, the nerve endings in our skin respond to temperature changes by relaying information about whether it's hot or cold. This process is a crucial part of our feedback systems, which help maintain homeostasis. Essentially, receptors act as the first line of communication, alerting our control centers so that appropriate responses can be initiated to keep our internal environment stable. Let's talk about the control center in our body. The brain acts as this control center, and its main role is to set the range of values that need to be maintained, like our body temperature or blood sugar levels. It constantly evaluates the input it receives from receptors. Those are specialized cells detecting changes, such as temperature receptors in our skin. Based on this information, the brain generates an output command to bring things back to normal. This output can travel through nerve impulses or hormones, depending on what's needed. For example, if your skin temperature drops, the brain responds by initiating mechanisms to generate warmth. This feedback system is crucial because it helps keep our body's internal environment stable, or in other words, it maintains homeostasis. So the brain's role as a control center is fundamental in coordinating these responses to keep us functioning optimally. Now let's talk about the effector. The effector is the part of the feedback system that receives the output from the control center. Once it gets this signal, it produces a response or effect that actually changes the controlled condition. You'll find effectors in nearly every organ or tissue in the body, which makes them essential for maintaining homeostasis. For example, when your body temperature drops, the brain sends an impulse to the skeletal muscles, causing them to contract. This contraction leads to shivering, which helps generate heat and bring your body temperature back up. So, in essence, effectors are the agents that carry out the necessary actions to restore balance. They're a crucial link in the feedback system, acting on signals from the control center to produce a response that keeps our internal environment stable. Let's start by talking about negative feedback systems. These are mechanisms that work to reverse a change in a controlled condition, helping the body maintain stability. For example, when blood pressure rises, negative feedback systems kick in to bring it back to normal. A good illustration of this is the regulation of blood pressure itself, which is essentially the force exerted by blood pressing against the walls of blood vessels. When blood pressure gets too high, these systems respond to lower it, ensuring everything stays balanced. Now, moving on to positive feedback systems. Unlike negative feedback, these systems actually strengthen or reinforce a change in a controlled condition. Think of a process where the body amplifies a response rather than dampening it. A perfect example here is normal childbirth, where the release of oxytocin boosts contractions, which in turn stimulate more oxytocin release, creating a cycle that intensifies until delivery occurs. Finally, understanding how both negative and positive feedback systems work is crucial for grasping how our bodies maintain homeostasis. Negative feedback helps us keep conditions stable, while positive feedback drives processes that need to be completed quickly or forcefully, like childbirth. Both are essential for our health and survival. When there's an external or internal stimulus that causes an increase in blood pressure, our body needs to respond quickly to keep things balanced. That's where baroreceptors come into play. They are pressure-sensitive receptors located mainly in the arteries. When they detect that the blood pressure has risen too high, they send nerve impulses to the brain for interpretation. The brain processes this information and then sends responses back through nerve impulses to the heart and blood vessels. This response typically results in the heart slowing down and blood vessels dilating, which helps lower the blood pressure. As a result, blood pressure drops and homeostasis is restored. This decrease in pressure essentially negates the original stimulus, bringing the system back into balance. This entire process is a classic example of negative feedback, which is fundamental for regulating blood pressure and maintaining overall stability in our body. It's a perfect illustration of how our body constantly monitors and adjusts itself to keep us healthy. Normally, under healthy conditions, the heart pumps blood under pressure to deliver oxygen and nutrients to our body cells. This process is essential for keeping our tissues alive and functioning properly. However, when severe blood loss occurs, this system is disrupted. Blood pressure drops because there's less blood circulating through the vessels. As a result, the cells receive less oxygen, which means they can't perform their functions as efficiently as they normally would. If the blood loss continues, the situation worsens. The heart cells themselves can become weaker because they are not getting enough oxygen and nutrients. Eventually, the heart may struggle to pump effectively, leading to a further drop in blood pressure. This creates a vicious cycle. What we're seeing here is an example of positive feedback. The initial blood loss causes blood pressure to fall, which then makes the situation worse by impairing heart function and reducing blood pressure even further. This cycle can escalate quickly if not managed, highlighting the importance of understanding these feedback mechanisms in maintaining our body's stability. Now, when the normal equilibrium of our body processes is disrupted, it can lead to different levels of imbalance. At a moderate level, this imbalance can cause a disorder or an abnormality in the structure and function of body systems. This is what we typically refer to as a disease. A disease is specific to a particular illness and usually presents with recognizable signs and symptoms. Signs are the objective changes we can observe, like a fever or swelling, things we can measure or see. Symptoms, on the other hand, are subjective. They are what the patient feels, such as a headache or fatigue. As the imbalance becomes more severe, it can escalate to life-threatening conditions, even leading to death. This progression highlights the importance of maintaining homeostasis. When homeostatic balance is lost, it results in homeostatic imbalances, which can have serious consequences. Understanding these concepts underscores how delicate our body's equilibrium is, and how crucial it is to recognize and address imbalances early on to prevent severe outcomes. Thank you all for your attention and engagement throughout this presentation. I truly appreciate your time and interest. I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to the University of Jordan for providing the platform and resources that made this possible. Your support has been invaluable in helping us explore and understand these important concepts. Remember, the key takeaway from today is the importance of continuous learning and collaboration. These are the driving forces behind innovation and progress. I hope you leave here inspired to apply what you've learned and to contribute positively to your fields. Once again, thank you very much for being such a wonderful audience. I look forward to seeing how you'll implement these ideas moving forward. Have a great day.